Welcome to the Fall and Rise podcast, a podcast about real people, real setbacks, and relentless comebacks. Today, we are joined by someone that has overcome all three of those, Peter Knowles. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad, to be fair. I thought I was going to be worse. So we're a couple of days post run, and things are looking on the up, which is obviously amazing.
Definitely. How are the legs feeling after 101
Yeah,
miles?
you know what? They're actually not too bad. I've got an awful tan line from where I wore some short socks. Well, it's actually like a burn line. But apart from that, a little bit sore, but nothing's injured. So recovery's looking good. But
That's
yeah.
good. Yeah, that's really good. Um, let's talk about the run. So it started 5 p.m. ish on the Saturday. What was going through
Yeah.
your head those half hour before when you walked onto the track for the first time? How did that feel?
I felt absolutely fine. I felt absolutely fine because the thing is, it's sort of like ignorance is bliss, and when you're doing something as long as this, you don't fully understand what you're getting yourself in for. You know it's going to be tasty. It's going to be horrific. You could describe it in all sorts of ways, but somewhat you just go for it. So going into it, getting on the track, and sort of before, I was just focused on making sure everything's in the right place and make sure we're ready to go. But other than that, yeah, like I wasn't too bad. I was pretty calm.
Nice. And your first lap you did with the local MP. How did that feel?
Yeah, that was quite cool. So Luke Murphy, the local member of parliament for Basingstoke, where the track was, came down and he ran either one or two laps. I
Yeah.
ran so many laps I can't remember, but he ran a couple laps with me, which was very nice of him to obviously make the effort. So yeah, that was quite cool. It's quite cool. Like you had a good turnout, and lots of people from all over the place, and some very interesting people too.
The
So yeah, that was
Saturday
cool.
the Saturday when you started was hot. How did it feel those first couple of Ks in, you finding the rhythm in the heat? How was that?
Yeah, you know what? It wasn't too bad. I'd been in the heat a couple of days before, and it was like you'd be in the car, you'd get out of the car, and it'd be like it really hit you. But the heat wasn't too bad. So, and then the whole point of doing the run, starting the 100-mile run at 5 p.m. ish, was that sunset was between 9 and 10. So we'd have only 4 to 5 hours of sunlight and heat, which would be on the lower end heat wise because it's sort of the end of the day. And then when I'm fresh, I could go all the way throughout the night. And then when I get to the morning, where I expect it to be in a bit of a bad way, which I most definitely was, then the heat comes up, but you're going slower anyway, so sort of all just works out.
How was it running into that night with you had the lights lit up on the track? How was it
Yeah.
when about 1 a.m. where people started to leave? How was that?
Well, yeah, like we had, so at the track, we didn't have the big floodlights on. We didn't want to disturb the local residents. So we had these, I can only describe them as lightsabers, if anyone has seen Star Wars. They're about a meter long, the tubes, and they're these LED lights. And we had 16 of them plotted around the track. And most of the time they were red. A couple of them are red, and then each corner was blue as sort of like just get to the blue one, just get to the blue one. And then we also had them strobing like rainbow. So it was something out of Mario Kart, which is quite cool. Uh, but yeah, so people came down throughout the night. People came down throughout the whole run. I put an invite out there for anyone who wanted to come down and run a few laps, show some support, and people certainly did that. And like you were saying, it was midnight and people are turning up still, which is really, really cool. It sort of dipped off about 1:32 in the morning, and it was just me running around this track. And of course, I was tired, fatigued, etc., etc. So, but we made it to the morning, which was amazing, and the lights were quite cool. So, but yeah.
During the night, you had like limited support, and you had a couple of pretty big setbacks, I'd say we'd call them. Can you
Yeah.
explain what they were and what happened, how you got out of them?
Okay. So in terms of setbacks, at this stage, like we agreed, I started about 5 p.m. at night and sunrise was 5 a.m. in the morning. So that's 12 hours of running, about, sort of, I think 90 kilometers or so. I don't even think it was that much. I think it was about 80 kilometers, so about 50 miles. And essentially what happened is my left leg on the back of it, a sort of, hamstring area, but slightly lower. I'm not too sure the specifics, but it was just in pieces and I could barely run. And then it got to a stage where I couldn't run. And then I was struggling to walk. I was just sort of hobbling along. And the problem with that is that I could keep moving at a very slow rate. But at this stage, I was just under halfway through. I was about 45 miles in. And how am I going to get the rest of this run done if I can't even run? You know? And even walking, it would have taken a very long time and it wouldn't have been, a run because I would have basically walked more than half of it. And it just wouldn't have been ideal. So that was the first setback, me essentially not being able to run. And there's videos of me on the track, just sort of, in pieces, hobbling around. And I think what happened as well is that it'd been very hot in the day. And then at night, it got very cold. It'd gone from sort of 30 degrees to 13 degrees. So I believe my muscles sort of contracted in the cold because it was very cold. And also they were fatigued as well. And that just wasn't great. But I was very fortunate to have a good support crew there. And they sort of gave me massages on my legs. We had a generator, so we managed to get the recovery boots on. Um, but the next setback after that, which it all sort of happened in one big blob, was I was very, very fatigued. I was so tired, so tired. Obviously, I hadn't slept that whole night. I didn't really sleep too well before the run either, because you're sort of knowing a little bit about what you're going to do to yourself, how much it's going to hurt. It's going to be torturous. So sleep before was limited, and then of course I went through the night, so there was no sleep there. So I just needed to have a sleep. So I had 30 minutes of sleep on the track as the sun had just sort of rose. And yeah, I was, fighting to stay awake, fighting to be able to run. It just was not good. Um, yeah, it's horrific.
Mentally, it must have been very tough. You got the leg that's like sore, cramping up, and then you've hit this wall of tiredness. How did you keep going through that like mental block?
See, the toughest thing mentally was obviously I wanted to complete this run. There was enormous pressure to complete this run that I'd willingly put on myself. But that pressure was in the form of I'd let everyone know about the run. And people were coming down from very, very far to be there. I mean, we had Devin who drove from Germany to support me. We had Stuart who drove from Cornwall. We had Josh who drove from Wales. People were coming from obviously Windsor. They would come from Basingstoke, surrounding areas. It was a big, big thing. And so to be in the morning and thinking physically, it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to get this done. Mentally, I wanted to, and I was ready to push, but physically, I don't know what I'm going to do. And that was very tough mentally because I knew that I'd be, I suppose you could say, letting people down. Not that they'd say it was like that because they would know that and understand that I pushed as hard as I could. But you know, even in the morning, Josh, who was coming from Wales, said, "All right, mate, hope you're going good. I'm leaving in a half an hour." Bear in mind, it's a 4.5 hour drive. So I knew that if I quit, he's going to be a couple hours into driving to me and then going to have to turn around. I knew that we had the Fifth Orchards coming down with the fruit. They were driving from Essex to bring me fruit. Well, I can't let them down either. I had people who had said they were going to come back and did come back. And there was just so many people that were sort of supporting the event, and I couldn't. There was no option just to stop. So I had some sleep, and then just kept going. I got a bit of a second wind,
Do
and
you
yeah,
think
everything
that
worked out.
do you think that second wind was helped by the influx of people coming to run with you in the morning? Because I'd say about 9, 10 a.m. you had a lot of people running with you. How was that?
There was like 2 second winds. So the first one, the first second wind was when I initially had the problem with my leg and I could barely run. And there was a few hours of very slow movement, but just keeping going. That was the first one. And then I came back from that. And it was the stage where even my crew, who obviously they're there to support me, I could tell from them, and I understood as well, things aren't looking good. And at no point did anyone doubt my mental ability. It was more of just like the body's gone. And it just wasn't looking good. So the first one was coming back from that. And actually, when I started running, and there's a video of it, and I say, I'm back in the game because I really was. And now I was able to run. It was possible. And then the second one was a couple hours after that, where, well, about 5 hours after that, actually, it all sort of blurs. 5 hours after that, I was really, really tired, and I had to have a lay down because I was fighting to stay awake. I'd never been so tired in my life. And I had about half an hour laying on the track, covered by wet towels, just trying to cool myself down and get some sleep. And then getting up from that, if you can imagine having well, you can't even imagine. Imagine that alarm when it goes off really early in the morning and you really, really don't want to get up. And then times that by about 1,000,000. That's what it felt like. Because I was down, asleep, cool, resting. Things were actually, that's what I wanted and needed. But to get up from that and to keep going, knowing that I'm only halfway at this stage, I've got to go another 50 miles, was incomprehensible. But I got up. And then after a few laps, then, like you say, an influx of people came, and that really lifted me. And we got moving, and we were running, and we were covering some grounds, and things took another turn. And from there, everything was okay.
Yeah. I was there in the night. I mean, your face when your dad turned up with pizza, I'll never forget that. You literally lit up.
Yeah,
Although you tried to
yeah,
pull the classic Dean Carneses, eat pizza on the go. How did that fare for you?
yeah. So that was that first night when my dad brought pizza, and like after I don't know, I probably ran a marathon at this stage, and then you see your favorite pizza turn up. It was mythical. So yeah, I had 3 slices of this pizza, and I wanted more because I was sat down. I was having pizza. Oh, this is really good, but that was a really bad idea. I shouldn't have had three slices of pizza. I mean, Dean Carnazes, right? If he runs and eats pizza, that's just a different level because it seems like a good idea, but when you get going, it was all just there in my stomach, and I thought I was gonna be sick. So that was another setback, I suppose. But yeah, the pizza was a bit of a morale boost. That was good. Really
Definitely,
good.
yeah. And I then came back after work the next morning, and you were looking good. You looked strong. You were running well. How did that? Like, you had a big group. I think you had 8 people running with you when I got there in the morning. How was it running in a pack like that?
It was really good. It was really good. And like I said, over the course of the run, hundreds of people came down throughout. And to have at some stages a group of like a herd of sort of 8, 9, 10 people running with you, and you're moving as one, it really did help. It really did help. And we got in a good rhythm. And from about the 100-kilometer point, it's my bad, that's my alarm. From about the 100-kilometer point, I had a group of people running with me, and many of them actually stayed. Obviously, you ran your longest ever run, 30 kilometers. Your dad did 60 kilometers with me. We had all sorts of people who were running, and to be able to move as a pack and have that support, and it really took my mind off things, and we were able to get it done, and we were breaking it down into 5 kilometer chunks. So we were sort of running 5 kilometers, having a moment just to sit down, get a cool towel around me to cool me down, and then going for another 5, then another 5, and another 5, and another 5, and another 5. Just keep going. We got in a good rhythm
Yeah.
because there was a lot of 5 kilometer
A
loops.
lot of 5Ks we did. Did
Yeah.
the getting the whole rhythm, the whole pack moving together, did that help like take your mind off things, and did it help like keep you going? Because you must have had some darker moments in that later stages. Did it all help?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like emotions, it was like you say, very dark in the morning, like mentally, because there was some real setbacks. The kind of setbacks where it's, I wouldn't even say 50-50, but for argument's sake, 50-50, am I going to be able to keep going or not? And then to get to a stage where actually there wasn't anything like that. I had a big pack round me, and we were able to move as one. And I'd never questioned my ability to get it done. I knew I had to endure, but there was never a doubt as to whether I'd be able to get it done. Basically, from the 100 kilometer point when I had that big group with me and we were moving well, so it really did give a boost.
Yeah. And I joined for that last 30K, and we found a rhythm of running the straights, walking the bend once your ankle started to play up a little bit. Did that help the ankle at all?
Yeah, so as you know, like I'd been on my feet for a very long time, and I'd probably gone about 80 miles, 85 miles at this stage. And going round the corners, I had like a sharp shooting pain on my ankle, but I could sort of manage to run the flats. So, as you said, we were running the flats and then fast walking. Well, what felt like fast walking, the corners, and doing it like that, and then doing it in 5K chunks. So that definitely helped a lot because that was, another setback, I
Yeah.
suppose.
I've got to ask regarding the ankle. You were very reluctant to take the paracetamol about 88 miles in. You had two very experienced ultra runners, Nick and Rob, saying, take it, it'll take the edge off. Did it help?
Not really. That I felt. The thing is, that's the first time I've ever taken painkillers during any sort of ultra run, anything like that. It's not necessarily because I want to feel the pain, but I just didn't feel it was necessary. Like I know I'm going to be in pain. That's sort of what I signed up for. And equally in my mind, if my ankle was painful when I was doing certain movements to it, such as going around a corner, then I didn't want to numb that pain and continue to run on a corner, which if it's painful, it's obviously doing something wrong. It's doing some damage. I'd rather feel that so I can adjust accordingly instead of just numbing it, but actually injuring it and being worse off. So as I currently stand now, my ankle's okay. It's recovering. It's going to be back to normal. Whereas potentially if I had not been able to feel the pain or it had been very, very numbed down, then potentially I'd have done some damage to it. So that was sort of the reluctancy there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But watching your stride from about 88,
Mm.
you had a really funny stride on you. You were like almost duck walking, trying to protect it. Once that paracetamol kicked in, you kind of found your normal rhythm again. And I think that helped you definitely a long way.
Perhaps, I mean, it was all a bit of a blur. So if that happened, I'll just have to take your word for it. I was sort of up like that in terms of energy, emotions, and I was pretty stable throughout. But yeah, I suppose it probably did give me a boost. I don't really remember. So, but yeah, we were moving regardless. So
Yeah.
that's all that matters.
At what point did you think I'm actually going to finish this?
Well, that depends because realistically, there was no point in my mind where I actually thought this is going to happen, this is going to happen. There was never like that because I always knew that things could go wrong. I never doubted my mental ability, but I just understood that what I was doing was so pushing the limits so much, so extreme that anything could happen. And that is what happened. Anything did happen. We had so many setbacks, whether it be the extreme fatigue and needing to sleep, not being able to run almost halfway through. and then obviously the ankle cropping up, and as you remember, that was a sharp shooting pain, almost as if I'd, done something really significant right there and then to it. There was all these things, and I knew that I'd drag myself through it. So in that sense, I always knew that I was going to do it, particularly towards the later stages. But I just understood that there was factors in my way that were out of my control that could pose a big threat to it. So there wasn't necessarily any stage where I thought, I'm going to do it. It was just all a bit of a blur and all of very surreal throughout. Even now, it hasn't processed as such that I've done it. There wasn't, it's not like when you do a race and you push through to this imaginary end line that you haven't seen yet, and then all of a sudden it comes up and then you're going to do it. Because I was going around in circles. It's sort of, I did over 400 laps of an athletics track. There wasn't, the end was in sight, but it wasn't. It was very surreal.
Yeah.
So the answer to your question, it never felt like it was going to end. It was just relentless. I've been there for 27 and a half hours at the end. There was no end. There is no end. I don't believe there is an end. It was just a blur.
As you said, you did over 400 laps of the athletics track, 162.5K. How did you break that down? Because that's a very big number. How did you mentally break that down to keep yourself going?
Yeah, breaking it down mentally is very important because it can become overwhelming. So the way I did it is I did it in kilometers. So 100 miles, which is what we're doing, we did 101, but 100 miles is 160.9 kilometers. So very simply, I started running and I focused on getting to the half marathon, which I knew would be a breeze. And then from the half, I sort of thought, okay, let me get to 30. And then when I was at 30, which is, close to 20 miles, I think 32 kilometers then is 20 miles. So that was the next break point. And then, okay, let's get to 40 kilometers, which is the next chunk. And then, 42.2 is a marathon. And then from there, let me get to the 50K, which is an ultra marathon. And then breaking it down into fives and tens. So from 55 to 60, 75 to 80. Then when I was at 80, that was a big landmark because that's around 50 miles. And then from 80 being 50 miles to 84.4, that was 2 marathons. And then from there, 600 meters. Okay, now I'm at 85. That's the next checkpoint. And then 90, then 95, then 100. 100 was obviously significant. And then from there, the 105, the 110, the 115, then at 120, that was the longest distance I've ever ran, going past 120. So that was very significant. And then simply we just broke it down into 5K chunks. So then 125, 130. That sounds like we're at an auction, doesn't it? 135, 140. And then within there, at some stage, obviously, I think it was 120, between 120 and 130 kilometers, I had the triple marathon, which of course was another nice little checkpoint. So obviously at 126.6 kilometers. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. 126.6 kilometers. That was 3 marathons. So that was a nice little one. And then, of course, from there, less than a 5K to get to 130, then 135, 140, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then I think at 150 kilometers, it was sort of at the stage where everyone understood fully that it doesn't matter what happens now. It doesn't matter if I lose the ability to run, walk, stay. It doesn't matter what happens to my body. It was possible to drag, crawl, whatever it took to get to the finish line. And every kilometer that went past, it was just more confidence within everyone that it didn't matter what happened now. It didn't matter if I break my ankle, if I tear my hamstring. It doesn't matter what happens, it's going to get done. And we chipped away, chipped away, chipped away. And in the last few kilometers before the 160.9, which is the 100 miles, everyone had been running up as a pack up until this stage. And then everyone sat down. And then I was doing commemorative laps, I suppose you could say. I was doing a few laps of each individual person that was remaining there, just so I can have a chat with them, which was very nice, just to thank them for obviously coming down, because, you know, some people had been there hours. You know, there was people who'd ran with me for, you know, a half marathon, a marathon, an ultra marathon, people coming down multiple times. They'd been down the day before, they'd been down again, uh, all sorts. Some very inspirational people. So I was running a few laps with these people one at a time. And then obviously I ran the final lap, which made it to 100 miles, which of course was a very significant moment. And then from there, we weren't done. We had to get to 101, which was 4 more laps of the track. And so I did three of those laps with some people. And then I brought it home on the final lap and dropped my fastest lap of the whole thing, you know? So yeah, that's how I broke it down, because it's all about breaking it down. If I just thought, oh, I'm 30 miles in, which is a long way, oh, I've got 70 miles left to go, it's overwhelming. The whole point of these things is that it's breaking it down, and it's all a mental game. There's a physical part that plays into that, but as seen from my run, this 100-mile, physically I was gone. There was nothing left. I was exhausted and I was broken, and mentally I got back up every single time and kept going. So being able to break these things down is very important. And I suppose sometimes being able to disassociate from what you're doing. If you're too in the moment, you become overwhelmed. You are susceptible to varying emotions, which can throw you off. You may feel good and be riding a high and you're feeling great. But then what happens when you hit that low? That's going to throw you for a wobble. Whereas if you're stoic throughout and you're just at a sort of even level mentally, then that's where I like to be, and I can get it done. And we did get it done
Yeah,
together. So
definitely got it done. What was going through your head that last lap? You could see us all cheering you. What was going through your head as you got round that last bend on that last lap?
I was quite surprised how fast I was going. You know, I was nippy, so that was good. I suppose, like I said just a minute ago, because you're disassociating from what you're doing, and you're pushing beyond, really beyond, it doesn't almost feel real, because you're sort of having an out of body experience where realistically, I shouldn't be able to do this. I shouldn't be able to run this far, but I just have. So it didn't really feel real. And even looking back, 101 miles is an awfully long way. And I'm only starting to realize now that is insane. Like, humbly, like, no ego attached, that is insane. So I suppose at the time, it was all just a bit surreal. And I was just thankful for it to be done. And I was so incredibly thankful for everyone who'd helped me and supported me. But I think some things just take time. And over the next few days and weeks, months even, I'll start to have moments where I look back and I'm out of that and I can actually be in the moment. And I'm not disassociated from what I'm doing. And I'm in the moment and I can look back and think, yeah, that's cool. So at the time, there wasn't a lot going through me because I'd been through a lot, but I think it just takes some time.
Yeah. On that last lap, we had a bit of a scramble in the spectator bit to get everything ready because it's normal when you finish 100 miles to get a belt buckle. And
Yeah.
I got one made last week. It was a bit of a scramble to get it done in time, but we got it. And I told
Yeah.
no one about it, so only my dad and Rob knew that it was there. And then I think it was Nick. I think it was Nick and your dad were like they were talking once they'd done some running with you and your dad had spoken to you. He was like, "Oh, all we want is a belt buckle once he finishes." And you still had a long way to go at this point. I went, "Hang on a minute." Went to the bag, got it out, and they were like, "Yeah." So, how did it feel when you got the belt buckle?
That belt buckle. Yeah. It's, I just, I've always wanted to run 100 miles, and I've always wanted to get a belt buckle for running 100 miles. For those who don't know, ultra marathons, like such as the 100-mile distance, you get a belt buckle instead of a medal because a long time ago, that kind of distance used to be people would race their horses. Like they'd sit on their horse and ride their horse for 100 miles, and then they'd get a belt buckle because obviously they were cowboys. And then one day, a man didn't have a horse, so he ran the race, and then obviously he got the belt buckle like everyone else did because they didn't have a medal for it. And then since then, 100-mile runs, you get a buckle. So I always wanted to have a buckle, and I tell you what, I am wearing this. This is not going to be collecting dust like all my other medals. This is getting worn. So if you see this, just know that I worked incredibly hard for this, and I'm very proud of it. And also, I run 100 miles. So yeah, but yeah, no, see the buckle. That was just that was so cool because I didn't expect it.
Yeah. And the shoes that Devin gave you, they were really cool. How did it feel when he gave you those?
Yeah, let me quickly grab those just very quickly. One sec. So for those who don't know, Devin, lovely, lovely guy. He's the guy who drove from Germany, good friend of mine. And I met Devin out in Portugal when I did Ultra Trail de Morale, which is a 120-kilometer run through the Portuguese mountains. And Devin was doing the 60K. And halfway through, it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd gone through the night. I was 62 kilometers in, and he'd only just started. He saw me, and we had a chat and became friends. And essentially, he has this shoe company called Modi Fox, where they're 2-in-1 shoes. So they basically clip out like this. So this is, you could use this as like, obviously this is the lifestyle one, but they have like a sports shoe just like this. And you use it as a flat shoe for gym. And then if you want to then go from using that in the gym for doing squats or weightlifting, you can then clip it back into the foam sole and then use it as a running trainer. So essentially, he presented me these shoes at the end of my 101-mile run. So it was very, very nice of him, very, very thoughtful. And essentially, what's so great about these shoes is you can just sort of just about see, I believe. Here it says 101 miles engraved into the shoes. So thankfully, I did run 101 miles, otherwise we would have had a problem. And and then on the other one, just about see, it says going further because I've always said go further even when it seems impossible, which I did. But also it's going further together, which is what we did only a few days ago on this run because of how many people came down and supported. And quite literally, we went further together. So that was another epic present to be able to have these shoes. I was going to put them up with the medals and cherish them, and I will cherish them, but on my feet. So if you see these as well, like if I get a combo of these shoes and the belt buckle, it's game over. Game over. So, but yeah, no, epic gift from obviously yourself and Devin. And then obviously Josh, he arranged a box of the world's most exotic fruit, um, which they delivered by hand to the track, which was also amazing. And I've had lots of mangoes and all sorts. But yeah, belt buckle, shoes, fantastic presents. So I appreciate those very much.
What we didn't realise when you had the fruit is there were two boxes. We actually started to eat Josh's box by accident. Couple of us like
I'm sure he doesn't mind.
no, it was all right. But I'll tell you what, the fruit was incredible.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got some here still. This is what I've got left. I've got a coconut, plantains. I believe these are plantains. Whatever these are, I don't know. Haven't had them yet. I will be onto those. I believe that's a lychee. Is that lychee?
Yeah,
And some of these.
they're good. They're really good.
But honestly, they pride themselves on presenting the world's most exotic fruits, things that I've never seen before. Some of the fruit, well, they're already gone because I demolished them, but literally just a massive box of the world's best fruit. And after the run, that was glorious. So
Definitely,
glorious.
yeah, it's definitely worth checking them out if you fancy some
Yeah,
fruit.
the fifth orchard. Orchard. Yeah, good
Orchard.
stuff. But yeah, it was very nice. And like I say, everyone came from far to, support me, and they drove from Essex to give me some fruit. So they're a friend by my account now. But yeah.
Definitely. Recovery wise, what have you been up to? It's been a couple of days now since you did the run. How are you
Mm,
recovering?
just chilling. Just a little bit of walking. Went out on a bike ride. Um, yeah, not too much to be fair. Just staying mobile here and there, so that I'm not just laying down and my legs are just going stiff, I suppose you could say. Just little bits of walking, little bit on the bike here and there. Um, yeah, that's basically the extent of it. I'm not in as bad of a state as I believed I would have been. There's of course still the effects on your body in terms of like your hormones, and not just things that you can necessarily feel straight away. Uh, you know, what I've done to myself through this run is, of course, very extreme, and there can be repercussions from that for some weeks, months, etc. So, so yeah,
Nice.
but at the moment everything's okay.
Good. So we ask three questions to our guests. I am going to ask you three questions, but they are not going to be. They're not all of them are going to be the normal ones. Okay. So, if your younger self could see you now, what would they say?
If my younger self could see me now, I believe they just say, "Wow." It doesn't really change from the first podcast we did. I always wanted to do cool things. I feel like I'm just getting started with that. So yeah, I suppose they just say, "Wow."
Yeah. The second question I've got for you is, what lessons did you learn on your run?
I suppose this sounds really like cliche. I learned you can always go further, even when it seems impossible, and you can do that together. And I prefer to do it together because, you know, to get involved with other people and to have that experience. Anyone who was there will understand the energy and the atmosphere was, something that it can't even be described. It was incredible. Everyone coming together, people you didn't know became like family, and you're working together for a common purpose and a common goal. And no one asked anything in return for it. They were just genuinely there to support me and to go further together. So that's what I'd say.
Nice. And then my last question for you is, what's your message for the listeners now?
My message to the listeners is to go further, even when it seems impossible, but do it together.
Thank you. It's been good to
Appreciate
have
it.
you on again.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone's getting sick of my face now, but if you're
Oh,
still
you're the
listening,
co-host, so
thank you. Appreciate it. But yeah, appreciate it, Jenna.
no worries, mate.
In a bit.
See you later.